And Robert Pastorloo, he says you're one of those critics. You're part of a conspiracy theory that it just is not founded.
That I'm a conspiracy theorist? That's very flattering on the part of Mr. Pastor. What he is an out-of-control elitist who hasn't been elected or in any way nominated by this government to do a darn thing that he's doing. And the fact that this administration and some of this country's largest corporations are pushing ahead with this, with some of Canada's leading elites and Mexico's, there is not a single thing in this that even remotely has legitimacy. They're trying to speed the flow of both cargo and people, they say, across this nation's northern and southern borders. Critics call the plan an outright attack on our sovereignty. Congress has been looking the other way. Christine Romans reports.
Plans for an integrated North American community by 2010, moving ahead swiftly and under the radar. Robert Pastor is an author of the Council on Foreign Relations document seen as the project's roadmap.
We need to deepen economic integration by moving towards a customs union with a common external tariff. I think we need to enhance our security by beefing up both our borders and beefing up a continental boundary.
But critics fear an attack on American sovereignty, a super NAFTA with borders erased between three very different countries with no public oversight. Texas Congressman Ron Paul is a rare voice of concern on Capitol Hill.
We're not supposed to give this to the executive branch devising quasi-type of treaties that the Congress seems to not have any control of, and then it turns out to be managed trade for big corporations and not to benefit to our workers and to our people.
The House International Relations Committee and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee have not held hearings on this, and a high-level conference this month in Banff was closed to the press. Critics raise concerns about secrecy, but the plan has a website, spp.gov, highlighting myths and facts. Without explaining how, it says the Canadian-Mexican-U.S. partnership does not attempt to modify our sovereignty or currency, nor undermines the U.S. Constitution, but would create jobs by reducing transaction costs and unnecessary burdens for U.S. companies. Robert Pastor says a more open public discussion would quiet what he calls conspiracy theorists.
A North American Union is impossible. None of the three governments or countries are interested in unifying into one country.
He says the goal is more cooperation.
But that doesn't quiet the concerns about this cooperation or what it's going to look like. Just yesterday, Congressman Virgil Goode of Virginia introduced a resolution opposing a NAFTA superhighway and various elements of a North American Union, as the critics call it. And Robert Pastorloo, he says you're one of those critics. You're part of a conspiracy theory that it just is not founded.
That I'm a conspiracy theorist? That's very flattering on the part of Mr. Pastor. What he is an out-of-control elitist who hasn't been elected or in any way nominated by this government to do a darn thing that he's doing. And the fact that this administration and some of this country's largest corporations are pushing ahead with this, with some of Canada's leading elites and Mexico's, there is not a single thing in this that even remotely has legitimacy. And the fact that this Congress, thank goodness that Virgil Goode stepped up here, the fact that this Congress is not demanding an investigation into this right now is sickening. This is elitism run rampant, and it's just, to me, it's just inexplicable why it's being tolerated. Pastor, what's his qualification?
He's studied North America and its institutions for 30 years.
Ah, good. And this is his conclusion after all that study at the Council of Foreign Relations. Thank you very much, Christine Romans. That brings us to the subject of our poll tonight. And Mr. Pastor, listen up, because what we're going to do here is we're going to talk to somebody besides the head of a U.S. multinational or one of your little Bush administration friends or any of those other elitists in Canada or Mexico. Here we go. Let's see what people have to say about your little idea. Do you believe there should be a federal investigation of U.S. government efforts to support a North American Union? Yes or no? Please cast your vote at LouDobbs.com. We'll have the results later here in the broadcast.
A special televised meeting of the New York-based Council on Foreign Relations provides a window to the real story. The speaker, Vice President Dick Cheney, takes a question from David Rockefeller.
Vice President, I just enjoyed so much your whole speech, but I was particularly pleased that you gave such a strong endorsement for the free trade agreement for all the Americas, subject that has been of great concern to me for many years, and particularly recently, and I think it's absolutely essential for the strength of our economy.
Rockefeller's role in the drive for an FTAA was a lot more central than he portrays. Rockefeller cultivated Latin American leaders who could be counted on to support such a proposal. Both the 1994 Miami Summit and the FTAA proposal were conceived and nurtured by a Rockefeller-created network. Prominent among the organizations sponsoring the Miami event were the Council of the Americas, founder and honorary chairman David Rockefeller; the Americas Society, chairman David Rockefeller; the Forum of the Americas, founder David Rockefeller; the Institute for International Economics, financial backer and board member David Rockefeller; the Trilateral Commission, founder and honorary chairman David Rockefeller. Rockefeller's influence also extends to the current administration. He was chairman emeritus of the CFR when Vice President Dick Cheney once served as a director, a relationship that Cheney concealed during his congressional career.
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
Arizona Senator John McCain, regarded by many as a potential Republican presidential candidate, is very concerned about the integrity of national borders. Unfortunately, the border commanding Senator McCain's attention is the one separating Iraq from Syria, not the border dividing the United States from Mexico. In a June 19th interview on NBC's Meet the Press program, Senator McCain spoke at length about the need to close Syria's border in order to prevent terrorists from infiltrating Iraq. Quote, "If Syria will not enforce its borders, the United States may not be required to respect Syria's borders." Close quote. Amazingly, McCain, like the Bush administration, displays little concern over Mexico's invasion of the United States via illegal immigration. This is even more remarkable in light of the fact that McCain's own state of Arizona is on the front line. The crisis is not limited to Arizona. Across our nation's southwestern frontier, hospitals inundated with illegal aliens are closing their doors. 1 out of every 4 homicides in Colorado are committed by illegal immigrants who flee to Mexico. In Los Angeles, 95% of outstanding homicide warrants are for illegal aliens. Illegal Mexican immigrants fill the ranks of ultra-violent street gangs. Over the past 5 years, a war between 2 Mexican narcotics syndicates, the Juarez Cartel and the Gulf Cartel, has torn apart the Mexican border town of Nuevo Laredo. The violence has slopped over the border to Laredo, Texas, which has been plagued with kidnappings and assassinations in broad daylight perpetrated by agents of the Mexican drug cartels. Much of the current wave of border violence has been traced to Los Zetas, a paramilitary drug gang attached to the Gulf Cartel. Originating in a Mexican Special Forces unit initially deployed to fight the Gulf Cartel, the Zetas were created by military officers trained by the U.S. Army. Whichever Mexican narco-terrorist syndicate controls Nuevo Laredo will command a critical drug corridor connected to Interstate 35, a key highway running from the Rio Grande to Lake Superior. It is no exaggeration to say that our largely unprotected border with Mexico represents an acute terrorist threat. Indeed, by some sober estimates, more Americans are killed each year at the hands of illegal Mexican immigrants than have been killed in action in Iraq. To learn more about what you can do to protect our independence, please visit stoptheftaa.org.